I'm back here on the fall 1916 turn of my Paths of Glory playthrough, getting ready for what could be, I say this almost every turn, could be the decisive turn, having looked at the cards and some other factors. It's going to be difficult for the Allies at this point. One thing I want to say before I start is that David Cesabo commented on a few of my videos asking a question about the siege phase and about replacement points. At the end of this video, when I'm done, I'll run through an example of both the siege phase and the replacement point phase for you, but that'll be at the end of the video, so stay tuned to that. So last episode, we had a complete capitulation of Italy, and it's a bit difficult at this point to see. I think it basically means the surrender, because they cannot bring any units onto the board because they can't have army reinforcement. Firstly, because there are no more army reinforcements, but they also can't replace army units because the capital has been captured. They do have SR available units from the reserve box, but you have to SR them to a space with a unit of the same nationality, which there is not. So as far as I can tell, the only thing they can do is recapture Rome and then be able to get units back in. But otherwise, the Italians are done for, which is unfortunate, of course. And that's going to be a major problem for the Allies to have to deal with, because there's just not enough troops to divert to this front to retake it, especially if they get replacements in there, and then it could be an even bigger problem. But either way, let's keep that in mind first of all, and let's show you the hands. So you have the Royal Tank Corps, held this for a couple times now. Alpine troops, useless now without any Italians. Greece, there's already Greece has already come in on the limited entry, so this isn't incredibly important. And we're not really thrilled about this one war status point, because I think at this point that favors the Central Powers more than anything else. Russian reinforcements, 2 more armies. I mean, they're just packing so much punch right now. They're going to play it for sure to get the reinforcements, but geez. British reinforcements, they'll get an army and a corps. Allenby to get the Near East army, which is good. To start pounding away there. Maybe that's where they can pick up some points and help balance things from Italy. The MEF, another opportunity for a sea maneuver to perhaps open up some points in the Middle East as well. A lot of these do come with war status points, which of course it would right after the Central Powers dumped that Fall of the Tsar card. But it still might not matter. The Central Powers have French mutiny. We saw this one last time. Finally, the Hindenburg-Ludendorff card comes up. It's a big 2 points right there. And it's good because they can get rid of their mandated offensive, which I'll talk about in just a second. But anyways, they needed this one. It comes along with Blucher, which is, part of this card. It allows the play of this one, so that's nice. Reinforcements, desperately needed. High Seas Fleet gets them a victory point, and as you just saw, they don't have the Grand Fleet, so this will get them a victory point guaranteed, which will put them in the 20 they need anyways, so this only helps them get things done this turn. The Kaisertreu, which is kind of nice. And then the war in Africa. This one's interesting because we've had this one earlier. You can play it and possibly get a victory point, but the British would certainly get rid of a corps rather than take that victory point loss. So it brings me on to the next point. They've got a victory point in their hands, thanks to the High Seas Fleet. They also will have one in the bank, because the mandated offensive for the Allies is the Italians. Now that's very unfortunate, because the Italians get their mandated offensive on a 4 to a 5. So, I mean, they have just as good of an odds as France, and better odds than Russia and Britain. So, they're going to lose a victory point because of that. So now they're looking at 2 victory points down. They're going to have to hold on to what they got, including Genoa down here, and capture some more. I think those are going to have to come probably from the Middle East, or maybe the Russians can get something done. There's a chance, especially if they can get these two armies in, and then really get a move on the Germans. I think those two armies are going to make it impossible, especially for the Austrians to hold off. The Germans can probably bring in two armies. But either way, it's going to be an uphill battle here for the Allies to hold on under this just continued snowballing pressure. But it'll be over to the Central Powers to start us off. Okay, so both sides have exchanged some cards here at the beginning. The Germans have played a reinforcement card and then all event cards trying to get out that Hindenburg, Ludendorff, War in Africa, and the High Seas Fleet out of their hand. For them, they don't need to do anything. They just need to hold on because they've got 2 victory points in the bank. So they're not even going to worry about really doing anything offensively. That puts the impetus on the Allies now. They need to get 2 victory points and not give up any in order to not lose. So this is their opportunity to do that. It's going to be a massive offensive on the Western Front. They just got the first army in to London and then Calais, and they're going to move 2 attacks, one on Cambrai and one on Brussels, both entrenched positions in an attempt to pick up both victory points, or at least one, and then finish off the job later. So this is a very consequential attack here. Now, it's going to be in the space, just the first army. It's entrenched against 2 British corps. We'll do this one first. 2 British corps in the first and second armies. Total strength of 12 against a strength of 5. Now the Germans are entrenched, and they've got pretty good odds on the die roll. The only problem is a column shift could put them in real trouble. Plus, they don't have to retreat because of the trench as well. So this is a very difficult one. So I don't think that they can be flanked because they're in a trench. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, no flank attacks. So that helps me decide that. So it'll be straight up 12 against 5. And just so you can see my reasoning here, the 12 column, the best they can roll on the 5 is a 5 if they roll a 6. So, likelihood any of these will be enough. These would definitely be enough, but that shift is going to make it very nasty for them, especially them rolling on the 5. They roll high, this may not work. Plus, since they're in a trench, they don't even need to retreat. They can block it, which is why that 7 would be a really big deal if they could get a high number. But I'm sure I'm going to roll a 1 and a 6. 1 for the Allies and 6 for the Central Powers. Well, I was close. 2-5 actually. So it was 1 off in both directions. There you go. So a 2 here is still going to be a 4. And then a 5 is also going to be a 4. So 4, 4. And I think I did that right. If you shift over, yeah, if you shift over, it's still a 4. So they're both going to do 4. So the first army will take 1 step loss. And they will take 1 step loss to the first army and a step loss to this corps. So it's not terrible, because they can do this again. I have the cards to do this again. The other attack will come here in the north. It's going to be 7 against 4 with a entrenchment there as well. Kind of the same things. Want high rolls. They're not going to get it though. 1 and a 3. For the Allies, it's going to be a 7 1. Shifted over 1 will be a 2, which is not good. And then they have a 4, and they rolled a 3, which is a 3. So they're going to do 3 and reduce that army. They're going to do 2, which is only enough to get rid of that core. So a little bit disappointing to not have as much as they wanted on this, but they've weakened those lines and maybe forced the Germans to do something about this rising tide here. It's positive because if they can get some replacements in, if they can survive this turn and get some replacements in, it doesn't look all that bleak on the Western Front. So now it's going to be over to the Central Powers and possibly a strategy change for the Allies. So another big 4 card for the Allies. They're going to use this in a 2-piece movement. One is going to be in the east for these Russian units here. These two 6th and 7th armies are the ones that just got brought in by reinforcement. The 8th army is going to slide over to Ivangrad. And then the 7th and 6th armies will go in as well. Now this giant stack is really going to threaten a couple of areas for the Central Powers. Now the obvious one is Warsaw and Lodz, because those 2 victory points they need, and they're only defended by 1 army. There's other areas they can go down into, such as Krakow, or even plunge down in towards Budapest. But this allows for a bit of confusion to be caused, perhaps, for the Germans, because they have 2 armies, one in Berlin, one in Breslau. They have to decide if they're going to push one into Warsaw and the other into Lodz, in which case Krakow is left open, which isn't too big of a deal, because they can probably cut the supply off to it if the Russians don't move in forces properly. So, anyways, it causes a bit of a dilemma there that keeps them occupied. The other part is a continuation of this attack on this front. It's going to be the larger of the 2 forces here in Calais and Amiens, attacking Cambrai. Once again, no flanking attacks available. And that's the roll they were looking for earlier. Double 6s. So it's going to be 10 combined strength against 3 combined strength. So 10 on the army fire table. And a 6 is 7. It's going to be shifted 1 down to 5. On the 3, 6 is 4. So they still managed to win. And they're going to have to... Now, I haven't figured all of this out. Now, if they have to do 5 steps, that's 3. Sends that to the eliminated replaceable. We'll bring out a core. So that was 3. Here's 4, 5. Completely gone. So 5 is exactly what they needed, because otherwise they wouldn't have had to retreat. They'll have to take 4 themselves. So they'll do 1. Oh, that's 3, sorry. And then they'll eliminate... let me see. This is where it gets tricky, because they need a full strength unit to move in. So they have to do 4. They could eliminate the first army and that core and have 2 full strength units. That's what they're going to do. To me, I really think it should be you have to reduce all unreduced units. It just seems right to me. And then I would get rid of the rule about having to only have full strength units go in. I understand that part. I don't know about the unreducing thing. I guess you could pick who goes in, who attacks, or whatever. Okay, so you can choose what unit to march in now. This trench is gone. And that victory point is retaken, so that'll push the victory points down to 19. Now remember, there's still that 1 extra from the mandated offensive, so they're not out of the water yet. They'll both slide in, moving the front line a little bit, and open things up for a three-way attack here, should they decide to do that. So that's what they wanted. It's a little bit bloody, but they've still got a full-strength army and a full-strength corps available to come up and really throw the hammer down in Brussels, all while things are still not looking great over here on the Eastern Front. So it's going to be up to the Germans to decide if they want to send one of these reserve armies to Brussels, perhaps, and the other to Warsaw. But there's pros and cons to each. So the Central Powers are going to do this. They figured that they have to give it one victory point, otherwise they win. So hold on to the easy ones. Brussels is not guaranteed, even though it's likely to fall if the Allies do another attack over there. But things could go badly, and they could end up holding out if the rolls go low. But here, there's an easy point to grab there. So they're going to make sure that these two victory points stay, and there are no loose ends over here in the east. So the 14th Army is going to go into Warsaw, the 18th Army into Lodz, and that's the last one is going to be to entrench in Warsaw, or at least to attempt to. And they have to roll lower, I think, than the loss factor, so 3 or lower. And they do get a 3. So they'll get a 1 trench in Warsaw. We got quite a few markers here now. And there we go. So now this is pretty foolproof over here. There's not a chance for the Russians really. They could possibly get Krakow, just besiege it, and then hope it falls during the siege phase. But once again, that's a large risk. And it's for the 4 card, I think that they could still kind of have that in the bank, kind of like as insurance, just in case the attack fails. So they get one final action, the Allies. They have the Greece and the Allenby card. They kind of want to keep the Allenby card, but Greece only allowed 3 points from Greece only allows you to do the attack in the west, in Brussels, whereas Allenby allows you to do the attack in the west and besiege Krakow. So, you know, obviously winning, or not losing, I guess, is more important than having this card, even if it does give you a bit of a setback. So they're going to play Allenby, just to be safe a little. And they're going to do a move action here. They're going to move. It doesn't really matter how many troops you have, I don't think. I don't think you get a modifier or anything on the dice roll as long as you have more. So we'll get a besieged marker. In Krakow. And that'll at least possibly give them a chance at getting a point there. And the other half will be here in a 3-pronged attack on Brussels. I won't put the attack markers down, but it's going to be these 3 spaces. So total 6, 10, 12 total points against just the 3 entrenched. So once again, they're hoping for those big numbers to get this done here. It's not going to be it. It's a 5 and a 2, similar to what we saw the first time they tried to attack Brussels. So a 12 under the 2, column shift is 4. 5 on the 3 space is a 3. So just to be sure, that is a 4 actually. And that is a 3. So they are still going to be able to win, quote unquote. But it'll be 4 losses. So that's 3. Taking some big hits here. And then 4 will flip this to a reduced strength corps. They'll have to take 3, which they'll just reduce this guy and leave this corps full strength. So now they would have to retreat, but they're in a trench space, so they don't have to retreat. And of course, they're not going to retreat because why would you when you can win the game? So this attack in all fails. They needed just one more. They were on 12, rolled a 2, switched over. Just checking the math again. Yep. So that's the last bit. And actually this works out perfect for David because he was asking a question about how sieges work. So this is a good opportunity to show him how this works. So typically on the sequence of play, what you'll do is you'll do the mandated offensive, roll the dice to see who has to attack, action phase, do the cards, attrition, see if anyone's out of supply, and then the siege phase. So the siege phase is here, step D. And you'll go and see any spaces that are besieged. In this case, there's only one here in Krakow. And in order to be besieged, the strength of the attacking force has to be larger than that of the fort, in which case this is 3, and that's 2. So I am besieging it. This unit cannot leave this space, cannot attack this space, can't do anything here, cannot attack from this space, anything, otherwise the siege is over. They can be attacked by someone else, but they can't themselves do anything. Now, during the siege phase, what you'll do is you'll roll a die, and it has to be higher than this number. So as long as you roll 3, 4, 5, 6, with a 1 strength fort, it's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and with a 3 strength fort, 4, 5, and 6. Pretty easy on that one, but just have to roll higher. Not equal to or higher, just higher than the loss factor. So this is it. This is the roll that decides the game. So you actually picked a good time to ask a question, David, because this is the roll that will decide the game, possibly. If it is 3, 4, 5, or 6, the game goes on. If it's a 1 or a 2, the game ends, and the Central Powers will win thanks to the fall of the Italians. So here we go. And you know what? This is what we'll do. We'll roll it over here, so you can actually see the roll as it comes in. Here we go. And it's a 4. So that means 4 is higher than 2. Therefore, Krakow does surrender. And it will fall to the Central Powers, giving them the victory point they need to stay in this game. We'll go on to the war status phase, where we'll check for everything here. The mandated offensive, I don't really know when that victory point comes in, but it's not before the siege phase, so that'll go up to 19 because the Italians missed theirs. And you know, actually, now that I think about it, the Germans didn't make theirs either. So technically, this is going to stay at 18. So that was a mistake on my part. It actually wouldn't have mattered, but they needed to make one attack, and they did not. So, anyways, they're on 18. And once again, the Central Power, or the Allies rather, have been given life. It seems like every single time they get on that 19, they manage to stay alive, and the Central Powers aren't able to finish it off. So that'll do it for this turn. It's the fall of 1916. We're going to go into 1917. And I just want to give David one more thing. The replacement phase comes after war status, and then you'll do any replacements that are here. I don't have any, but if there was a few, you can then do the replacements phase. Get 4 points for the Germans, 2 points for the British, and then you can then assign those. I believe it's one, they're listed somewhere. Yeah, it's on the back of the player aid sheet. It's 1 for a reduced army. It's 2 to recreate a full strength army. It's been eliminated. So then you can do the replacements phase there. But they do not, as you said, come on immediately. When you play the replacements cards, like the replacement points, they don't immediately come onto the board. You'll have to wait until this phase to actually bring them onto the board. But it doesn't happen immediately. So thanks for asking the questions. I hope that the answers help you in a visual sense. But we live to see another day. I really thought I was going to roll a dud there. It wouldn't have mattered, but you never know when I'm rolling the dice. So on to the next turn. All right, welcome back for the winter 1917 turn of my playthrough. Kind of had a interesting ending to that turn, and I did make a mistake. This does stay at 19 because remember we played the Hindenburg-Ludendorff take command, which cancels anytime the Germans have to make a mandatory offensive. So that negates the fact that the Germans didn't make an attack. They stay at 19 victory points, which is good for them. Also, the French mutiny is in effect, so let's go ahead and roll to see who has to make attacks. So it's going to be a 6 for the Allies, which is Russia, and a 3 for the Central Powers, which is Turkey. So there you go about that. You don't have to worry about missing that, really. But let's go ahead and get you the hands for the Allies first. They have Greece. They held on to this one from last turn. Probably be used for an SR or something like that, because this isn't all that useful. French reinforcements, 7th Army. That's nice to get another group in there, or perhaps down in Italy. Influenza, this is eligible. I've never actually seen this card before. It's also optional, so maybe you haven't either. Influenza, neither side may perform replacement actions for the rest of this turn. Already used ones are lost. So that's kind of nice. Over there, so this is a little bit early because they need the Zimmerman telegraph first. But this could be big time here. And look, what are the odds? What are the odds? I mean, there's a pretty good odd because this is 45 and this is 44 and this is 45. So I might just have not shuffled these very well. But basically, you're going to get the U.S. in on this turn. So that's a big deal. Because they could really use some of those U.S. troops, and maybe the U.S. takes over from the French, and now the French go down and fight for the Italians. You never know. So the Allies really couldn't afford that. 14 points can only be played after the telegraph. Only the Allied player may offer peace terms for the rest of the game, and subtract 1 BP. So that's interesting. British reinforcements, it can get in the Aussies. I don't know. I think those are only able to be used in the Near East. But anyways, this is very interesting. There are 2 U.S. reinforcement cards I know in the discard pile, so those aren't going to come up. But it's still interesting. And I think I've said this already, but the yellow bar means you play them for the event and the ops. So it doesn't hurt to play those events. I didn't do that once already. I think I just played the event, but not the ops, I think, earlier, but no big deal. Okay, now for the Central Powers, Blucher, which they held over from last time. The Sud Army, you know, it's can allow them to stack units. 2 cores, it's units, and they're kind of low in their replaceable box, so it's actually probably a good idea. Good for the Turks, they can bring in an army, which is good. Wireless intercepts, Hague. Make sure that this is still no effect after the play of Michel. So they could probably get this one in. They might be able to get this in before another one. Prince Max may not be played after turn 16. Just increases the war status by 3. Yeah, I've been thinking about it, and I do think that the Central Power should be going for an armistice. Should be trying to get that up as high as possible. This is the only card they have with total with war status points on it. But that 3 would move them up to 34. So obviously that's would put them pretty close considering. And I believe that once you get once you get to the armistice, it becomes whoever's in the lead gets like a victory, but not like the full victory. I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, they've still got to hold off here. I know that the Allies are going to try and get the Americans in this as quickly as possible, but this is really shaping up to be an interesting conclusion here, the second half of the game. Alright, so the Germans SR'd a army out of Warsaw and slid them over into Brussels because there was only one corps defending there. The British can't really make an attack against that position with an army there. With the corps, they would have done it. So in order to prevent the collapse of the right wing, they decided to go ahead and reinforce it. So they've kind of anchored that end of the line. The Allies respond by playing the Zimmermann Telegraph. That is a 2 war status, so that's going to move it up to 33. They don't know, but the Central Powers can get it up to 36, which is just 4 away from an armistice. So that's dangerous territory to be in. But they need to get the Allies into this. They need to get the U.S. into this because those forces could be a tipping point, could be something to get them across. Well, they get the 5 points for that as well. They get the 5 activation points. They're going to do a massive move here. We'll get the marches out of the way first, moves, and it's going to be 2 moves here by the Russians. It's going to be this force here in Chernowitz, the 9th Army, 1, 2, and then these guys are going to go 1, 2, 3. Let me put down control markers. I haven't been doing that effectively. And this helps with the road supply-wise, and it also cuts off this army in Przemysl, or I forget the name of it. I know there was a big fight over that location that lasted a large part of the beginning of the war, very bloody fighting in and around that area that was the center of a lot of the attack in the mountains in between the two countries. So I know that was a large area of contention. Well, this cuts it off from supply because that's one option, is just to starve it out, because it's a 3 fort, which is difficult, but it also allows them for a flank attack should they decide to bring in both these armies. It also sets up a good attack to this position, which would outflank the Austrians here, but this second attack is really what makes it difficult. They're going to, if I can just get a hold of the 6th Army. Just want the 6th Army. There we go. Hockey puck it out of there. They're going to go 1, 2. I don't think they're going to go 3 to Vienna. I mean, you say, why not? You might as well. But if you stay here, this unit can no longer cut you off from behind. So I'm just going to move there, because Vienna, they can always grab Vienna once they destroy the corps. So that corps is completely surrounded. And Budapest falls. And the Austrians are just getting carved up here. They're pretty much surrounded, and they're going to fall themselves. So it's like, oh great, we got Italy, but we lost Austria. So is it really that great of a trade-off? Not really. The Germans really wish they would have held on to Fall of the Tsar now as well, because it's buried away in the discard, and they're not going to be able to get it. So those are the 2 moves, by the way, if you could. I want to make sure you could see that. And then one of the attacks will come here in the north. It's going to be Riga. An attack here against these 2 German corps. They're both reduced, so it's 2 against 3, but the Russians will be rolling on the army table. By the way, this will fulfill the mandatory offensive for the Allies. So let's get the roll in here. Excuse me. So 6-4. Not bad. So on the army fire table, under the 3 column, a 4 is a 3. And under the corps 2, a 4, 6. So 1 for the Central Powers and a 2. They rolled a 4, sorry. A 4 is a 3. So, be a 1 step loss, which the Russians can't take, and then 3 for the Germans, which it'll be eliminated, and that box is really filling up. I have not done the replacement points all that much in this game, which is obviously probably a bad idea. I just haven't really been focusing on it because it's always been stuff I want to do, which is probably why the pace of this war has been faster than it was historically, because I haven't taken time to rebuild. I'm just throwing men in this really deadly conflict. Haven't really settled into that static warfare most of the places. So they will retake this position and move out of Riga, threatening this northern entrance into eastern Prussia. And the final bit of this move is over here in the west, and it's a French attack against the German positions at Sudan. So it's not entrenched, but it is a forest position, but they think that they can bloody the Germans' noses here, because they have a lot of forces built up. The Germans have really gotten away with kind of being lax on the Western Front. The Allies have built up forces, they just haven't used them because their attention has been elsewhere. But they have, the French have 3 armies, the 1st, the 10th, and the 3rd, this French Corps, and the 4th Army in Verdun. So it's going to be a total strength of 13 for the Allies, and then a strength of 7 for the Central Powers. So this is not like they can stay, they don't have to retreat. So it's not like an idea they really want to push the Central Powers out. It's just, we have these activations, let's, try and continue to shake this line and see how much we can get to fall. So it's a pretty low roll, the 4 and a 3. And on the Army Fire table, under the 12 to 14, a 3 is 5. And under the 7, a 4 is a 4. 4 is 4. 3 is 5. So the Allies will win the fight doing 5 step losses. So that'll be 3 to flip this one. And then 4, 5. They'll get rid of that corps. And that will fulfill their step losses of 5. And then the French will have to take 4, which they can take 1 for an army. And then 1 for this corps to make it 4. So that fulfills them. Now the Germans normally would have to retreat, but they're in a forest hex, or spot, not a hex, forest location in Sudan, so they don't have to, and they're going to elect not to, because why would they? And that'll bring that to an end. So that's a willing trade-off there. If they were to attack again, it would be 3, 6, 9, 11. 11 against 3. So that's just 1 column down for them. So that's still a fight they're willing to take. So this, I think they can bleed out the Central Powers, and this huge lead they've built up, this 18, 19 victory points they've got, is just about to fall in the next 2 turns. I think that the pendulum will shift into the favor of the Allies, but we'll have to see. Over to the Central Powers. Alright, so the the Central Powers took their turn, and they really wanted to SR an army into Vienna to keep it protected, but wasn't possible because they can't play SR cards consecutively, so they had to just move some troops. They evacuated Debrecen with the Austrian units that were there, and they also evacuated Przemysl, because there was just no point in holding. It's a great fort, but it doesn't serve any purpose. It's not a victory points base. So you might as well keep that army out. So they retreated some forces, repositioned in the north as well, off camera, I think. Oh no, you can see it. They moved back from Vilna to Kovno, because there's a flanking force there kind of threatening them. So the Allies have a lot of events they want to play, and not a lot of cards for ops up for grabs. So they went ahead and have gotten that card out. It was the Greek an entry card, and the reason they didn't play it was because it has that one war status point on it, and they really just don't want to keep moving that up, because at this point time favors the Central Powers, and they don't want to give them any more advantage there, not before the war changes to their direction, and they don't think they can do it before that could possibly run out. So this is a 3 move here. Just thought I would show it to you because it's going to set up the new line, which is just, I think, interesting because obviously this is completely ahistorical. So these guys are going to go 1, 2, and move into Sudan, and take Debrecen as well. That will give them another victory point, which moves the count down now to 16, so still an advantage to the Central Powers. That's decent. And the Russian army here, the 9th Army, will go 1. I had a plan for these guys. 1, 2, 3 to Vienna. They are going to go to Vienna because there's no sense in not make them take it from us. And this last army here was the one besieging Przemysl, or being outside of it. They're going to march through 1, 2, 3. And that will establish a new line. Actually, they don't control the space technically. And that establishes a new defensive line in a very interesting area. So now it kind of stretches, kind of here. The Austrians do have those 3 armies that were in Debrecen removed. It's funny because it's actually a fair fight. 3 armies at 1 strength against 1 3-strength army. I don't see why the Russians can't hold this. But at this point, it's also going to move the victory points down to 15. So at this point, the Russians have pretty much conquered the Austrian Empire, and I think realistically in real life that they would collapse at this point. I don't see these troops made up of so many different ethnicities and nationalities that they would remain together during a time like this. I think they would have fallen apart, but that is not simulated here. So we'll carry on with these Austrian units, but they are in disarray. And the one good thing for the Central Powers is that I don't think the Allies are going to be very aggressive after this because the events they have. They don't need to be. They have time to run this out. They're only 5, 6 victory points down, really. But for the Central Powers, they would really, that would be fine if they could play replacements. But little do they know that the Allies have influenza in their hand, which can wipe that out. So what you're going to see pretty soon is the Allies playing events, the Central Powers playing replacement points, and then these Allies just dumping that influenza card on them late just to really twist the knife. So it'll be over to the Central Powers now to figure out what they're going to do and where they're going to set their defenses up, because the north is not stable either. They have 2 Russian armies there facing off against some battered forces. So whether they make their stand in Prussia or whether they try and hold it out in Kovno remains to be seen. But I don't think there's going to be much more action on the Western Front, and there's really not much more to do in Austria. They've taken all the available victory point spaces. So, and actually the victory points, no, they'll stay the same. I thought that they had taken Krakow, but I never added that victory point back when I moved that Austrian unit out. So they sit at 15 victory points currently, and the Central Powers, they're also going to have to think about if they play that Prince Max card, they're going to be up to 36 points, which leaves them 4 away. They need to be able to get those 4 within the next turn, because 5 victory points is all they can give up before things go badly. And you're saying there's 2 in Russia that probably will go. And then maybe on the Eastern Front if they don't get some replacements. But at this point, you know, it looks pretty bleak for them. But, of course, anything can happen. We're on the last action card of the 1917 turn, and both the sides pretty much just exchanged event cards and replacements, pretty much, and some reinforcement cards. The French brought in the 7th Army over in Paris. The Central Powers brought in some Turkish units and did their thing down in the Near East. The Germans might have brought one in. Anyways, there was a couple. The Allies played 14 points to get extra victory point back, so the victory points are now at 14, and the Allies did not have to play Influenza for the replacement points. They could have done it themselves, but they're really, I mean, like, they could use the replacement points. That would be nice, but I just, you know, probably could. But the Russians are in such a good spot, they don't need them. The French don't need them. The British really are the only ones that could benefit. Now, there are a couple in the, mostly just core, in the eliminated replaceables box, but overall, everybody's doing pretty well. So, we're going to not do that, and instead go for this move. The Germans in the north abandoned Kovno because it was just in an awkward spot to come at. They knew they were going to lose Vilna. They're very much reduced. So they moved back into this forest hex that prevented the Russians from getting in behind or from advancing around. It protects this position in the south as well as their own. So this is just a simple march by the Russians into 1, 2 to here. This army is also going to come down and put some pressures on the Germans, who are back in their own territory now. It's going to give 2 victory points to the Allies, which moves it down now to 12. And the second half of this is in the south. This army here, army and a corps, are going to move 1, 2. And now we have a new front line that the Russians are contemplating exactly what they want to do. There's the ability to flank this Austrian army here, but that's for next turn. And the last bit will be this attack in the south. I was originally going to use both of those armies to attack, but I didn't quite have the activations, so I'm going to just do one. The idea here is that these can be used either to come around, because the Austrians, you can just see it here, blocked the Russians' path into Italy in case they wanted to go to Munich, or even cut off the German and Austrian units down in Italy. So they went ahead and closed that path off, but the idea for the Russians here is they can open up the door to work their way around those Austrian units, or they can even go and threaten Belgrade and get that victory point back, because at this point they see the the Central Powers played Prince Max, which gets the war status up to 36, so they're only 4 away from an armistice. They see this as a dire need to get the war victory points on their side of the track. They need to get it down below 10 for them to have the advantage and basically turn that back around on the Central Powers. So this is just a small attack. It's a corps and 2 corps, 1 full strength, 1 reduced, against 1 full strength Russian army. So it's 1 strength against 3 strength. The roll is in. It's a 3 and a 5. And on the army fire table under the 3, a 3 is a 2, which is almost enough. And here a 1, a 5 is a 1. Well, 1's not enough to do anything. 2 will be enough to reduce and eliminate this corps. And this one will have to retreat 1 space. And they have to decide if they want to go south or north. Or west, I mean. They're going to go to Zagreb. And they may have to evacuate Belgrade as well. You never know. Anyways, they're going to slide the 6th Army in. And now the Austrians have been split into 3 parts. They have their western forces out in Italy and Austria. They have their southern forces in Serbia, and their northern forces helping with the Germans. And now it all just comes down to that that fall of the Tsar card. If they had just held on to that fall of the Tsar card, they had the opportunity with the points to eventually get it out. And then you're saying Bolshevik Revolution comes up, and then maybe they can knock the Russians out of the war that way. But now it's just a very difficult spot, because this is the first time I've ever played this game, so let me just say the Russians are really powerful. I have no idea if that's, with the way I've just played it, that they've had a lot, and maybe I haven't done enough a good job. I focused too much on the West and not enough on the East, and that's something I should have known. I can tell you I did not. I did not expect the Russian army to be this well-equipped, this large, but I just kept pulling up cards. It says Russian reinforcement. Here's an army. Here's 2 armies. Here's another army. And by the time they got pinned back, I realized, whoa, there's enough here to break out. And then it went from looking like the Russians were done for to now they're marching through Vienna. So that's problematic, because now they're sitting at 12 victory points. And unless they can get that marker across the line next turn, I don't think there's a way that the Central Powers are going to win this one. Now, whatever I say, the opposite is bound to happen. They were on 19 victory points for a long time, got knocked back, and came out strong still. They had to do it again on 19 victory points, even crossing into 20 at one point. So they've had some close calls, but maybe they can turn it around. Maybe they can't. It'll all be up to decision in the next episode. Thank you all for watching.